But that's the other benefit of using a recruiter. We say, hey, where should we go and poach from? And where should we not go? Because like, there's no rules in the wilderness. Like once you like let a recruiter loose, like if you got a Friday foursome with your buddies and they own a local competitor company, and they're like, you need to tell us now because we will go after their people. Think about it. Like if you're the owner of a business and you see another competitor or another industry adjacent and you start contacting their directors and VPs, if you get them to lunch, it's super awkward. It feels like volume up, like we're going to make this happen. It's just lunch. That candidate feels like they're on the 50-yard line, and everybody that walks in that restaurant is going to see y'all and think that you're plotting something. With me, I'm more like under the bleachers, having a quick chat and being like, point. It's just me and you. Let's talk. Let's clear on comp. Let's clear on timeline. Let's clear on things. If everything checks out, all right, cool. I'll introduce you.
All right. Welcome back to The Intentional Owner. We have a special guest today that, Sam, why don't you give us a little intro?
I will do that. So, Kaustubh, great to be back. And today we are going to speak with a friend of the pods and yours and mine, Dylan Scroggins, who has come from our community, the SMB ETA community, but he went the path of building rather than buying. Nevertheless, he supports the SMB community. So, Dylan, welcome. And tell us about yourself.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. Glad I'm still welcome, even though I didn't buy a business. I just thought you'd stop answering my text once I told you I wasn't going to buy.
If you say one more smart comment about the Florida Gators, I might stop responding to your text messages.
Well, I am a man of the people. You're acting like I'm not a fan. By marriage, not by blood, but still, fire Billy. Our friend Chandler Reed would appreciate that.
And yes, just so everybody knows, we're filming this shortly after the Florida USF game where we lost.
Yeah. I doubt he's going to turn it around by the time this goes live, but hey, I hope I'm mistaken.
Yeah, so give us a little bit of background, going as far back as you want, even if it's well before you coming into the community.
Yeah, I'll start back. I'm getting old. I'm 2 years from 40, a year and a half. Just yesterday, I had a candidate tell me, thanks for parental advice. And then a client tell me they love working with young people like me. So I'm like, I don't know what I am at this point. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, graduated in the global financial crisis. So that was awesome. Competing with 45-year-olds for jobs. My first job out of school was in admissions, which is basically recruiting. And I went to a smaller school here in Birmingham, Alabama, where I'm based out of. Then I spent a few years in nonprofit, but then came back to Birmingham to work for a recruitment agency. I was their first recruiter in the founder's basement. It was awesome. Didn't know what I was doing. Nobody really knew what we were doing. And it was great. So that was my first, introduction to this SMB world. After that, I spent about 8 to 10 years in software sales in the B2B space. So it was a fleet management software. Awesome product, awesome story, had a great experience. And that's when I really got into SMBs. This is like peak Twitter. I'm still a fan of Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I know some people think it's dead. I don't think so. Those are just the haters. But it was like peak 21, 22. I was learning a lot about, all the classics. Like I won't list them off, but all the books that anyone listening to this has read or heard or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to buy a business. Because I was on the other side, right? Like I was selling into the SMB space, leading a team, selling into the SMB space. And I was seeing it happen behind the scenes, right? Of people buying businesses, PE, whatever. And I was like, I want to buy a business. And so I think I cold emailed you, Sam. And I was like, all right, man, I filled out the Google form for boot camp. I was like, I'm doing this. Fortunately, it was like 45 minutes from my in-laws' house. So I did it. Didn't really know if I wanted to buy a business or not, but I was like, I'm going to do this 3-day boot camp. So you only brought me on this pod to talk about boot camp. So man, I had a good experience.
No free ads, Dylan. No free ads.
Definitely free ads. What is boot camp? Describe your experience, and can you leave me a Google review?
Yeah, man, I'm going to Venmo you later. Send a request. So man, I was there at those 3 days, and I was like, I don't want to buy a business. I can't really put my finger on it. I think some of it was just like personal preference, maybe some risk tolerance. Some of it was just family life, whatever. We're just, long-winded here. But I just didn't want to buy a business. But that started the wheels turning. Because I remember distinctly being like, man, I know how to recruit. I know how to talk to owners. I might just turn that jukebox back on and see what happens. So it's kind of the classic, like, was like the gold rush, like figure out how to sell in pickaxes. I'm kind of like, well, someone needs to swing the pickaxe. So what if I just find swingers and then leaders of swingers? That came out wrong. Johnny, you might need to edit that. Let me rephrase that. Um, that's
No, Johnny,
hilarious.
leave it in.
Yeah,
Please
Johnny,
leave it in. That might have been the best part of this entire podcast.
Yeah, Johnny, make that the lead in, please,
yeah,
to the episode.
yeah. Oh man. Let me come back here. So yeah, man, I had this skill set and I could do it myself. And I left the software world in December 2023, launched Kalmar Group in 2024. And yeah, man, it's been off the races since.
Okay, that's awesome. And I think I know we said no free ads, but just to touch on the bootcamp for a second, I was chatting with somebody at SM Bash last year, and we were reflecting on this point that the benefit of doing something like boot camp, you spend the money for it, obviously, but like people come out of that, I feel like either gung ho 100%, like, oh, I'm going to do this and I know how, or they come out like you, where they're like, oh, never mind. This looks like not a lot of fun. And it's just like, man, whatever that money was spent is so much better than like 6 months kicking tires and to only find out that, hey, I should never buy a small business anyways.
Yeah, a little PTO from your W-2 is better than a PG, right? Like I invested some money and some time and some effort, but like I left knowing that's not what the route I wanted to do. And seriously, like it's part of my story of Kalmar. Like that really was an inflection point of like, all right, no to that. I still want to get involved in this space in a more intentional entrepreneurial ownership role. That's when I tapped in and I was like, dude, it was like right in front of me the whole time. But I just needed something to kind of rattle me a little bit.
Okay, well, first, Sam, that's your new tagline. A
I
little
was gonna
PTO
say,
is better than a PG.
Hey, I'm going to charge you for that one. No.
I'm going to put that out on Twitter almost right now. Uh,
But
so
second, but before we keep going, I just want to hear really quick. Why did you decide that? Why did you say what did you learn at boot camp that was like, hey, never mind?
I think a lot of it was just like, man, recruiting's beautiful. It's a revenue driving critical skill set. And I think it was less about no to buying a business. It was more about yes to the skill set that I already have. And I think a lot of times that's kind of like my thesis with recruiting too. And, hopefully anybody listening to this just gets some good nuggets, whether or not they use a recruiter or not. But like recruiting is a sales function. Like you have to go out and sell the opportunity. Recruiting is a skill set. Like you can get better at it. There are a lot of folks that are good at it, but they could get great at it. And also, recruiting is a core business function. So, like on the Mount Rushmore, sales, marketing, operations, finance, like I'm trying to chisel some rock for recruiting. So, I think that's kind of my shift of like, all right, this is something needed. And also, the whole story of like the ETA space. Like, how many times have you heard it? Like, someone buys a business and maybe the GM leaves month 3, right? Or they buy a business, things are popping, they got some debt paid off, and they're like, man, we're going from like 12 people to 15 people. This is going well. We need to like level up the management, right? And we need to replace people or people get fired or whatever. So I kind of saw it as like going back to my terrible example about the gold rush of like, I did not have the skill, like the financing, like all that stuff, like good things that I could learn, but I didn't have the confidence to like execute. I was like, man, what do I already know and have the confidence and competence to execute? Just freaking do that. And also just like stage of life, man. I was like 35, 36, and I'm like, man, I ain't got time for that. Like, I want to do what I'm already good at and just get better at it.
So I think there are a few points to make here. First of all, Dylan, this will be the end of the free ad section, by the way. Johnny,
That's
definitely
great.
keep the free ad section in. A surprising number of people have the same experience you had, which is they come through, they learn a lot, and they live definitively not wanting to pursue ETA. And I'm the wrong guy to opine on whether that's good or bad. But I think 100%, if you're not committed to doing ETA, it's a huge risk for the people that are committed. For those that are unsure, I think the best thing that people can do is not pursue ETA 100%. And PG is only part of it. And the second consistent theme is a lot of people bump into ETA as future entrepreneurs. And it's just one form of entrepreneurship. So the fact that you run into ETA and decide not to pursue it, nothing wrong with that, so long as it promotes your eventual entrepreneurial adventure, and yours just became a startup. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I have a little bit of a guess that, we'll see what happens to the market and rates and you name it. But right now, there's an argument to be made for building rather than buying
Mhm.
based on prices for small business assets and where the market is in the general cycle.
Yeah, and I think so too. So many people are asking the question, should I buy? Can I buy? Will I buy? Okay, great. But can you lead it? Or should you lead it? Right? There's like buying is only like one function, and that's like the first function. Leading and managing and like running it, like it's a totally different question. And going back to the original, of like for me, I could probably figure out a way to buy it, but I just wasn't at a stage of life to like have confidence in myself. And this is not a diss on myself. If anything, it's just self awareness. Like I wasn't in a position to like run and lead an existing business, So I think that's the question is that, like the American Idol example. I know, Sam, you're a huge American Idol fan, but you see people that get up there in the audition and they're just terrible, right? And it's one thing to be like, oh man, I wish I had their confidence, but also like, what are they doing? Like, whatever. But really shame on the people around them. Like, because every one person that goes up there and just like sounds like a freaking toad, there's like 7 other cousins, brothers, sisters, friends who are like, yeah, you're awesome, knowing that they suck. So I
Yeah.
just think like for anybody in the ETA community or thinking about getting into it, it's not too late. It is for a lot of people. It's not for everybody, but you need to do like a 360 evaluation, talk to people who really know you and your skill set to be like, all right, not the question, can I buy it, but am I the person to run it?
Good point.
That's great. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
curious actually, when you were deciding whether or not to do your own search, are you give us your life background a bit? Are you married? Do you have kids? Like what was going on in that part of your life?
Yeah, man, it's funny, even like family of origin a little bit more. My mom, 45-year corporate woman, like worked for like big like conglomerates, right? She was working remote in the 90s long before it was cool. I was like a punk high schooler, my dog's barking, like I'm probably like farting in the back seat and she's like on a conference call. But then my dad was small town lawyer, like hanging a shingle, like got back from NAM and didn't want anyone telling him what to do. So I had these two like DNAs like battling in my bloodstream of like corporate great, great path, but also kind of like, hey, screw the man. Once again,
Mhm.
great path. So it was kind of ironic that like 17 years in my career, I kind of like chose a different path. But to answer your other question, yeah, I got married. I was like early 30s when I got married a Florida gal, go Gators. That's how me and Rosati originally connected. And I think I had one kid at the time and my wife's been pregnant for like 80% of our marriage. So we got married in 2020 and we're about to have our third kid in 5 years. So I don't remember which kid or like was at that time, but I know my wife was probably pregnant or we had a kid.
Checks
I
out.
know that feeling. That's probably Kaustubh where I should jump in. And
Yeah.
Please.
Resident expert.
I can opine on absolutely nothing on the topic because it will punch you in the face. However, what's funny is it is that phase of life. Like Kaustubh, you were early into the ETA game, not in the sort of time lapse of ETA's maturity, but at your age and when you came in, I found that the longer I'm, and so call it like a member of the community, the older the community is becoming. So I'd love to know average age of a self-funded searcher or searcher CEO who closes, but it sure seems like it's in that early to mid 30s time frame, which I'm eventually getting to my useless conclusion here that I think is when you're becoming an entrepreneur, it's the same time you're generally thinking about having a family. Those are two enormously large, risky, time consuming, draining activities. And yet, so many of us are going through them together. I actually think it might be a superpower to be able to do them together. You get so used to getting punched in the face every single day, it becomes no big deal.
Yeah, I might write a memoir called Is It Poop or Chocolate? Just, raising kids as an entrepreneur. Cause like at home, I don't know. That could be poop, that could be chocolate. At work, I'm like, that email comes through. It's poop or chocolate. I don't know. It's one of the two, And, I think for me too, man, like if I was to interview someone, maybe this is a side business that would never work, but if someone wants to know if they should buy a business, I'll sit down with them an hour and interview them. Having a sales background was also a cheat code where if I do think I bought a business, it would have helped. But man, I had a monthly quota for almost a decade. Like every 28 days, my self worth was evaluated by VC and PE. That muscle was already built.
Yeah.
So if I signed a PG, I mean, what's the difference between a PG and what I got now? It's like if I don't close business, I ain't making money. So it's like that's a guarantee on my personal life that I can't spend anything I don't make. I don't make anything I don't provide value. So for me, I think having that muscle already built of like, oh yeah, if I don't provide value, like I don't get paid. Like that's just how the world works for me. So I
Mhm.
think there's some folks that come in with a more of a finance background and they're kind of like, oh, the check's not coming in. And I'm like, the checks never come in, dude, unless you work. So I think once again, I'm not like making a hot take that like finance folks are not like suitable for ETA, but having a sales background, even a little bit, so Cutco knives in high school, like man, it is a superpower.
No,
Good
I
point.
believe that. I never had that type of pressure week in, week out. Like the pressure I had
Different
was
pressure. Yeah.
it was a different type of pressure, but it definitely wasn't sales oriented, right? And that feels like a skill I've had to generate and develop as a small business owner, which I could totally imagine if you had that coming in, it'd make you that much better at this.
Yeah. So yeah, shout out all my software sales folks who getting into ETA.
Okay, so let me pivot a little bit. So start of 2024, so about a year and a half ago, you start Kalmar. What is like call it high level, the differences of what entrepreneurship has actually been like for you versus reality or versus perception prior to starting your business?
Yeah, good question. Let me back up a little bit too, because
Yeah.
even in that quick intro, I'm sure nobody was like taking notes, but it wasn't like I just left and then started, right? I had a friend tell me, man, soon after I got back from boot camp and I was starting to kind of like talk to some friends, and he told me, keep feeding the baby. So any woman who listens to this who's been pregnant is going to like scoff at this because we have no idea what pregnancy's like. That was really helpful. So it's like I was like on Twitter and I go to boot camp and you just kind of like keep feeding it, and like keep thinking of that idea, keep doing some revenue models, keep talking to people. Hey, would you hire me for recruiting if I were to start? Like, keep going down that path. And I think that was really helpful. So by the time you start, you're like, okay, like I've already processed a lot of this and I can really kind of move confident into it. So I think for me, like that was big for me that I feel like a foundation was laid. And once again, I had a great experience in software. And then when I left, I've had a good experience too. But to come back to your question, I mean, just to summarize your question, talking about like the positives and negatives and
Yeah.
expected and unexpected, like the
Yep.
expected, like I was already used to getting like kicked in the teeth. And I mean that like complimentary. That's just sales, right? Like sales is like baseball. Like you strike out like every day, but you also get some singles, doubles, home runs every now and then. So I think I was used to that motion. So I was expected to kind of like get kicked in the teeth when it comes to starting my own thing. I didn't expect like the loneliness, man. When you work by yourself and like, I got some co-working space folks, like a lawyer and some random folks that I see like every day, but still have no idea what they do. Like they're not like my comrades. You know what I'm saying? Like we bump into each other like over the Keurig, but besides that, like we don't have much of a relationship. So I think that was a big thing that I did not expect. But the other thing I didn't expect was like, man, you get your eyes on deals. Like I've had some cool opportunities to kind of, be invited to some conversations that I probably wouldn't have as a W-2, not due to a lack of interest or intelligence, or maybe, but more just people didn't know that I would be interested. So that's been a cool, unexpected thing. I wear shorts to work a lot more than I thought I would. So that's good, but I also walk and talk a lot. But yeah, man, I mean, look, things come up some days, the whole like poop or chocolate thing that I'm like, wow, didn't see that coming. But it works both ways. There's a lot of good things that just come out of nowhere. But also plenty of things that you think are good, but just kind of like fizzle over time.
This episode is brought to you by the Kalmar Group, a recruitment firm that specializes in placing leaders in the SMB community. Most small business owners treat hiring like a side project. Post on a job board, text a few friends, and hope for the best. But when it comes to leadership roles, hope isn't a strategy. The truth is, your people are your most valuable asset, And building the right leadership team requires more than luck. It takes a proven process. That's where the Kalmar Group comes in. They help owners like you find exceptional leaders in operations, sales, finance, and marketing, from managers to the C-suite, so you can stop guessing and start growing. Whether you're running a long-standing business or just acquired one through ETA, change is constant. Key people leave, new opportunities arrive, and when they do, the Kalmar Group is there to help you hire with clarity, confidence, and speed. You hire an expert for legal, bookkeeping, taxes, etc. So why are you flying solo on recruiting and hiring? With clients across the country and a track record of results, Kalmar doesn't just fill roles, they raise the bar for how you hire. Led by founder Dylan Scroggins, a 15-year recruiting veteran, the Kalmar Group exists to help business owners stop settling for good enough and start hiring the kind of leaders who truly move the needle. To learn more, visit thekalmargroup.com or connect with Dylan directly. More details are in the show notes. And to be clear, you came from PE or VC-backed software sales.
Yep.
So a rather intense entrepreneurial situation, career, job. What are your hours like, and how flexible are those hours, considering you have wife, kids, all of it?
Yeah, all of it. I would say there are plenty of late nights and early mornings, but plenty of early nights and late mornings. It just depends, man. Like when it's under the gun, yeah, dude, I've normally work Saturdays probably twice a month, at least a little bit, chip away at something. There's some mornings I start at 6. There's some mornings I don't start till 9. So like I don't look at it as like a work-life balance thing. Hopefully I'll get better at this, but I enjoy what I do. I feel like I'm providing a ton of value. I really like my clients. And naturally, like once again, the muscle's already built. So if someone emails me, I'm gonna try to get back to them as soon as possible, just because that's like what I want to do. And fortunately, my wife is the daughter and granddaughter of entrepreneurs. She gets it. So yeah, man, like I don't have set hours, but even in sales, you don't really have set hours. It's more about getting the job done.
Well, I'm curious then, like you had a similar emotion in a sales role without as much of the kind of underlying owner risk, right? Like why make the change, right? Like why not, like you're a good salesperson, I imagine you were good at what you did. Like why not stick to that path?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I was spoiled, man. I worked at 2 like really great software companies. I'm not just saying that. Like they were both like exponential growth, came in at a really good time. I think it was just some of my DNA, right? Like wanting to do something on my own, being a lot of inspired by the SMB Twitter world, wanting to kind of, for lack of a better term, get in the arena myself. And some of it was just like kind of classic things, man. I wanted to own my own success. And there were, sometimes I think it's healthy to see someone do something and you're like, man, I could do that. Like that guy's an idiot. I'm, I'm an idiot too, but he's like more of an idiot. I can do that. And I sincerely am not referencing anybody specific, but I just think when you start to meet people and talk to people, you start to get to know people, you're like, there's nothing special about him. He might have gone to a better school than me, or he might have had a better background in this, but like at the end of the day, he's trying to figure it out. And when you start having intimate conversations with people and you realize no one knows what's going on, but it's about like high integrity, high value, high effort, like, yeah, there's plenty of guys that just married rich and they're at the golf course right now. They'll never listen to this podcast. Good for them. Great. No bitterness. But there's a lot of guys that just trying to figure it out, man. So I think once that kind of like that shininess kind of like wore off in regards to meeting other people and realizing that they just did it, eventually just got to do it. I think that was really inspiring for me.
I see that a fair bit, which is a lot of it is people make the jump who want agency, fundamental agency and
Yep.
independence. And even if you had something good before this, Kaustubh, you're prime example. You had a hell of a career path ahead of you if you wanted it. But the lack of maybe agency or independence or accruing the benefit of the time and the effort you were putting in, people are okay to make that trade. And it comes in that phase of life between like late 20s and mid 30s.
Yeah.
It bites a lot of us, that bug.
Yeah. 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 And it's not for everybody too. That's the other thing. It's like, I get asked even now of like, hey man, would you ever go back to a W-2 role? Probably not right now, but ask me in 3 years. I don't know. Right. I mean, I talked to a guy today who's left his family business of like 3 generations and he's looking for another CEO. Like life changes, man. I think just going back to this ETA theme of like, there's some guys that buy a business and it's great, but 4 years later, they want to go do something else. Like you can do that. There are no rules.
I'm curious then, one of the challenges I've found as a business owner is there's not as many wins as there are as a W-2 employee. Like you just have more like I shouldn't say easy tasks, but I mean you have just more goalposts to cross as a W-2 employee, whereas I feel like as a business owner the wins are harder to come by. And I'm curious, from as somebody who started a business, right? Like what is the cadence for recruiting? Like when do you feel like you have a win? Is it when you sign the client? What is it when you find someone for them? Like, can you walk me through kind of your like that motion a little bit?
Yeah, man. I saw this great Scotty Scheffler interview a couple months ago. I know Scotty gets accused of like being super boring, but he said something like, I'm a psycho. I like I like the training and like I mean, he's on another level, right? I mean, Sam's got the master's hat on. Dude, I'm kind of a psycho. Like, I love the process. And I'm serious, man. Like, I got 2 searches right now that are challenging. I got some other searches that are going really well. Like, I just kind of like the grind, man. So like I try not to even like, yes, I define a win when like the person's been there 90 days, like I get my last check, it's good. But if that client never calls me back, like that's not really a win. So I'm still trying to figure out what a win is. Obviously, like cash in the bank is a win, but also like when a client calls you back, that's even probably a bigger win. But also, man, like my business probably could be 30% bigger this year if I worked 30% harder. All right. Well, now I got to take the L for not seeing my kids at breakfast. So it's like, I don't know, man. That's a good question. That's like a deeper question than you thought. Like, I try not to keep track of the wins too much. I just try to like say everything's part of the process and see what happens. Maybe that's not the right path, but I'm still trying to figure out the answer to that question.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I suck at that. I feel like I really struggle to like just enjoy the process of kind of like eating sand or dirt for a long time.
Yeah. And also too, it's like I'm like even like trying to do some 2026 planning. Once again, I mentioned my psychotic behavior. I could slap a revenue goal on that. But dude, so much can happen between now and freaking December 31st. But then also like next year, who cares my revenue is if my margins suck, you know, or if I never see my family. So it's like, or something happens to the economy, good or bad. So I don't know, man. I'm just trying to keep like a really kind of loose hand of like what success looks like. But I'm still having fun. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still providing value. I just try to keep it simple.
Yeah, it's funny. Kostup and I talk about that a lot, which is to make it sustainable. That's where I kind of bucketed that description
Mm.
into is, we come from training of KPIs and revenue, EBITDA, EV targets. And to a certain extent, like that's short term. It creates more stress. Is the juice worth the squeeze from
Yeah.
all of that planning? And I'm not saying that you're trying to build something that you can balance better than other entrepreneurs, maybe like VC backed tech entrepreneurs. Like they have to be in the business 150 hours a week. And
Mm-hmm.
there is nothing else. And that's not for you right now. Maybe it will be at a certain point,
Maybe it
but not
will
right
be.
now. And that's what we're trying to do too, is find a way to have longevity here where we don't burn out in 24 months. Because the idea is to have this be our career for 30 years.
Yeah, man. It really is like calling it a marathon isn't far enough. Like it's a 100 miler, you know? I remember before I started this business, I had the thought, I didn't start this business to end me. And I think a lot of times people go in the ETA space. And once again, I didn't do it. So whatever, if I don't have credibility with listeners, like whatever, turn it off. I don't care. But there's a lot of people like you gotta count the cost when you buy that business. Cause like, yeah, man, like the first 6 months, dude, I was fighting like a dog. And then things started to level up and we're good. But then it dipped a little bit. Like I had some things go right. What I do? Last time I checked, I'm the only person in this office. You know what I mean? It's like it falls on you. So if you don't have that like that like kind of like not just mental fortitude, psychoticness, or just like desire, like you really got to look in the mirror because like it's freaking hard. Everything's hard. Being a W-2 is hard. I get it. I'm not saying one's harder than the other. Everybody's so
True.
sensitive, but it's freaking hard. So you got to count the costs. You got to like sit down with your wife. And like, I made my wife a PowerPoint slide, Google Slides. She didn't need that, but I wanted to show that. And I showed like, hey, here's my revenue. This is like, while I'm a W-2. This is where I'm going. And she's like, I believe in you. I was like, I know that, but I still need to show you this, right? And I just think a lot, whether someone's married or not, like you still have to have a certain intentionality about you and a plan, be prepared for getting punched in the face. But you got to like, it's going to be a hard couple of years to start out. Like, you just got to accept that.
Let me do one more thing, and then maybe we can get into recruiting and
Yeah, we
specifically
ain't
what
talking
you
about
do.
recruiting yet. Follow me. I hope I'm not preaching too much. I'm just like, I don't
No,
know what message I'm trying to convey, but just trying to encourage the troops here.
no, this is
No,
spot
this
on.
is
This is
good.
exactly what we talk about. Yeah.
It's exactly what we talk about. So I have an interesting comparison. You have a wife who comes from a family of entrepreneurs. So specifically, how do you think that makes your family, one supported by an entrepreneur, function in a positive way? And then I'd love to compare, contrast with Kaustubh, your spouse, who I'm assuming doesn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. I don't know. Actually, I
Kind of.
forget.
Yeah. No, we can talk about that. Yeah. Yeah.
And like, how does that impact your day to day? Like, what are the pros or the cons or the trade offs you have to make with your spouses for that reason?
Whew, Costa, you can go first, man. That's a good one, dude.
Yeah, I mean, Anna and I talk about it a lot. And look, like, unlike, I mean, you guys are married and have kids. Like, Anna and I have only been together a few years and aren't married yet. But, like, she comes at work with a much more of a what should our whole life look like mentality, right? She does not come at it from a, like, work is a work is a priority, but it's not the priority, right? And it's not like, it's very much like, how does this fit into who you want to be as a person? How does this fit into what kind of community member or family member you want to be? Which is all super helpful, but it's not really the mentality I was trained in, right? I was trained in how do you go out and grind and succeed in one very specific vector. And so Anna's pushed me a lot in this front, which is really helpful in like she understands that what I have to do is hard and she's quite supportive of that, but she's helping me kind of think through like what is too hard, right? And what are trade-offs? Like you said something like you didn't want to lose yourself, right? Like how do you define that? Like how do you like how
Yeah.
hard is too hard where you're like, hey, like you're not really yourself anymore. Like how do you calibrate? And there's just not questions like I've really wrestled with before. I think I've always sort of wrestled with like, I'm going to do what it takes to get it done. Right.
Yeah.
And like, there's a trade off there that's getting made at the cost of your partner, your kids, your community members, your parents, or whoever. That's kind of a silent cost or an unseen cost. And so I don't even remember what your question was, Sam, but like, I think that's where Anna and I have taken that discussion is how do you do hard things in a way that continues to feel values aligned and like the right level of hard.
Yeah.
Okay, so I bet you part of it is in the sheer number of hours that you guys are willing to commit to your job. And part of it's probably got to be the trade off in when those hours are spent. Like your Blooma can't be run by a person who has your R&Rs who shows up at the office at 9:30 in the morning.
Mm-mm.
No.
So
Yeah.
my
I mean, like, a tangible example is when we have emergency work that will often end up being scheduled on a Saturday, right? Because that's like when we have an open slot. And I pay the guys double time for that, and the client pays, extra. But Anna's really asked, like, hey, like, Saturday mornings need to be time for us, right? To like reconnect after the week and kind of regroup as a couple. And so like if to the extent we need emergency work done, I need to allocate somebody to manage that as well. That isn't me. Because historically it's just been me, right? Who sort of covers the logistics of it. And that happened this Saturday. We had one small job. The crew leader of that small job gave me a call while Anna and I were like out and about. And she's like, hey, like that's not kind of our agreement for Saturday mornings. Right. And I was kind of like, oh, it's just a quick question. I'm just gonna answer it. But it's like, yeah, that's not actually, how we're managing our hours as a partnership.
Yeah. Having those boundaries. I mean, one small thing I do, if I have a call on the way home from work, I will not park until I'm done with the call because there have been some times where I park wrapping up a call. It could be fairly important. My son's like banging on the window. And I'm like, this isn't fair to him. Like, I should have never like parked the car. Cause when I park the car, daddy's home. I can't be like, hey, 4-year-old, like I'm closing a deal here. Like back
Right.
off, daddy's got a deal. So that's like my fault. So I've like tried to be like to try to like lead myself and also just like be honest. Like if I have a phone call from a client and I say, hey, I got to take this call, Carolyn's like, great. If I got a phone call from my buddy, you want to talk about how much the dynasty's dead and Bama will never survive. I don't need to like, I don't need to take that call. You know what I mean? So it's just like this wisdom. And I think just like having guardrails on both parties. But like you said, like there's sometimes where it's like, it's 7 o'clock. We got an offer letter going out. I got to jump on DocuSign and send this. I got to, period. But once again, my wife's fantastic. We don't have to ever have like a, hey, like, it's like, I think everybody's, has different scenarios with that, but I do think there is a benefit of her coming from that entrepreneurship background where she knows, and her dad's a dog. I mean, he's a awesome business owner and worker and hard worker where she knows that sometimes you got to do what it takes.
I think it's at least worth having the conversation.
Exactly. It's it's like, where they say like military wife, professional baseball wife. There's certain occupations where it's like the wives kind of bond around it. That's been really helpful is that I got a local group. So none of these guys are on Twitter. They kind of rag me about it. But a local group of like business owners. And we're not talking like dudes that run like conglomerates here, just like good small businesses of varying sizes and revenue and industries. We meet once a month and it's great, man, because if you say you're a business owner out and about, people think you got like 2 jet skis, a Lake Tahoe house, and like own your schedule. It's like, well, that's some true for some people, but it's just good to talk to some other guys that like don't have any romanticism tied to business ownership. And they're more of like, the phrase like eating glass and get punched in the face, just like you. You're just sharing different, flavors of glass. But it's really nice because like it's local. And like, yeah, like we have so much value that I've gotten changed my life, some relationships I've made through Twitter specifically. But having that local group of guys, man, that's been really helpful.
That's a good point. And your business is unique in that it's not necessarily just a local business, whereas Kaustubh's is relatively geographically limited for now. I'm going to guess that, and maybe that's where we should get into, recruiting is less so. So let's start the recruiting conversation. For those of you guys looking at this podcast on video, I am going to introduce that little figure right there. So Dylan, what is that? Tell us the story.
Oof, man. Kalmar.
And get into Kalmar and specifically what you do, because we've all used Indeed and other recruiting tools, and we've used third-party recruiters. So where do you play in that broad landscape?
That's a good question, man. So a couple things. I'll get back to the Kalmar and the wolf in a second. There we go. So man, I think a lot of times when people think about recruiters, they think of like the random text message they got, someone offering them $80 an hour, flexible schedule, and like health insurance or something like that, some random thing. Or they think of them blowing them up for like a sales manager role when they're like a VP of sales. And like people think of recruiters in the same way they think about real estate agents. Some of them are awesome, help you find your dream home off the market. Some of them unlock a door, then ask for a fee. And you're like, oh my gosh, you're literally worthless. Obviously, I try to be more of the former. And I think having a true kind of recruiter mindset or a partnership, I sincerely believe it can change your business and change your life. And that's where it goes back to the value. And that's what I love about my job is that I don't help people find companies. I help companies find people. But, everybody says their biggest asset is their people, but nobody can invest real time into it. So it just kind of blows me away, man, of how like, once again, like I'm sensitive to it. I'm not in that world all the time and every business is different, but like it takes intentionality. So like if you want to like grow your bank account or if you want to like increase your bench press or if you want to improve your golf game, Sam, I know you're already like a scratch, but like if you want to do these things, you have to have a plan and a process. But I think with recruiting, people think, all right, I'll just post this job or wait for someone to walk in the door. And that just doesn't scale. So I think, that's just kind of the way I look at recruiting is like, once again, like a critical business function. I think hiring a recruiter, and once again, this is not like a free plug for me. It's not for everybody. If you can like post and get great people, or you can ping your friends, get great people, or you can just like procrastinate and wait to get connected, then great, like more power to you. But there are some times where you need like a critical hire and you need a professional, right? Like doing your taxes, like most people can do their taxes. But when you start getting a little complex and more things and whatever, it's like you need to hire a professional who only thinks about taxes all day, every day. And it's just what they do. And that's what I look at recruitment is that like for some people, you just don't need it. For some people, you should consider it. For other people, dude, you're dumb to not bring in an expert. You have a bookkeeper, you have a lawyer, you have an accountant. Why would you not use a recruiter for 2 searches a year for any sort of like 100K plus hire because you're getting that expert opinion and process. So that's kind of a plug for just recruiters in general, not me, but there's some great folks on Twitter that I'm all friends with. Like we're all connected. It's a massive market, but I think that's where you see an increase now. What my guy Christian's doing, plug him, Uncommon Elite. Me and Christian talk all the time. I texted him this morning. He's really tapped into something I think is special. But I just think more and more people are seeing the need of like, oh man, I didn't know I could pay someone to do this for me. And I really sincerely think, especially in the ETA space, 2 to 5 years post close, more and more people are going to start using kind of more formal recruitment firms. So I was trying to get ahead of that trend, but also I just really enjoy it.
So, I mean, when I think of recruiting, sort of you were teasing this out. I think of like two different elements. There's kind of the core recruiting funnel, which is constant churn of your kind of frontline team that you need to have people applying and interviewing and all of that throughout. And then there's kind of a high level recruiting side, which is more like, hey, like you want to drop in one really key hire, and that maybe happens once a year, once every 2 years or something like that. What are you focused on?
I'm focusing more on the latter, right?
Okay.
I call it like the LinkedIn deed line. All right. So what do I mean by that? LinkedIn is typically 100K plus roles where you probably need a plan in place. You need to not only just trust people who are coming in through a job post, but it's also like take a sales mentality and like go target people, whether you hire a recruiter or not. Indeed, it's more sub 100K roles that are more hourly and that you can probably get some really good volume that you just have to sift through. I do think it's smart for the owner to have like someone to sift through them, whether it's a recruiter or not. But I think that 100K line, I mean, once again, it's flexible, right? You got some frontline people making 140, you got some leaders making 80. Like, don't take it too seriously. But that 100K line is really important because Indeed's great, LinkedIn's great, but with both of those, you still need to have some like prospecting and like sales mentality when it comes to it and not just waiting for something to walk in the door.
So your focus is on the other side of the LinkedIn Indeed line, which makes sense because the vast majority of my recruiting is on Indeed. But like sales arborists and above that, sort of more certified positions, like I am starting to push more on LinkedIn and build a kind of a brand on LinkedIn for my company.
Yeah.
And so when you think of like your average recruitment engagement, like what is it like CXO for a small business? Like what would you call it?
I like to say leadership roles and I keep it vague.
Yep.
I'm not industry specific. I mean, the SMB world as a whole, I mean, I have done a lot in like property management and real estate and different you name it, home services, like water restoration. I've done all those. Typically sales, marketing, operations, or finance. Typically 100 to 250K, but I actually am moving more towards like under 100K. I got a cool partnership there of some people that can help me with those. But typically for me and my core business, straight down the middle is 1 to, let's say 200 to 250K comps, which typically are that general manager, director, VP, and C-level. But yeah, all around the nation too. That's the beautiful part of recruiting, man, is that you can do it all over the nation and it really doesn't matter.
Do you have an ICP? Like, what does ICP stand for?
Customer profile
Ideal customer profile. Yes.
Yes, I would say an owner-led, privately held business. That's it. So that's very broad, but I like working with the owners. I think when I don't work with HR, like HR stands for hates recruiters. I have worked with some people who have HR offices, and
Interesting.
I'm sincerely mean this. I've worked with some great ones, and they see me as a benefit because think about it. You don't get into HR if you love recruiting. You want to be developing people, culture, compliance, like all those things. Like that's what you got into HR for. You may have been a recruiter for like 1 or 2 years early in your career, but it was a stepping stone to get into more kind of formal people leadership. HRs typically hate recruiting. So they see a recruiter come along and says, "Oh my gosh, you psycho. You actually like messaging 100 people and cold calling and LinkedIn and emails. You like that? I will pay you just so I don't have to do it." So, yes, I would say 70% of my clients do not have any sort of like formal HR people function, and they see me as like a recruiter HR combo in a sense. I'm not an HR professional, but they see me as that. But then 30% have an HR office, but they just like, no, bring on this recruiter. We trust him. He shares the story narrative. He brings us great people. And then we handle the hiring and the interviewing, but he does the sales function.
So you are trying to straddle the line between small businesses where the owner is the decision maker on hires, not an HR function, generally speaking. So small enough where that's the case.
Bingo. Yeah.
But
I'll
also
summarize.
big enough where the hires they are going to make are, I think you said $150,000 to $200,000 annual salary,
Yeah.
C-suite or manager level people. That's not a tiny business. That's a fairly big business.
Yep. Yeah. I'll summarize it even, more succinct than I did. Big enough to offer quality opportunities, but small enough to not need a formal or full-time HR or recruiter. So, and we'll dip down below the 100K if we have to, for like a GM role, but typically it's like a teaser so we can get that VP of sales when it comes available next April. And we also do confidential searches. I don't know what's in the air, but I've been approached 3 times in the last 2 days about confidential searches. So all you W-2s out there, get your stuff together because you can be replaced.
What
Wow.
does that mean? You're getting hired by a owner who wants to replace somebody on their team, and
Yep.
they're looking to go on a process to replace, not just fill an empty seat.
Yeah, replace, like actively replace. So they don't terminate the person until we got to hire. Those searches are tougher and I charge a little bit more, but yeah, they're doable.
No, I mean that sounds exactly, and not the replacement one, but like your ICP is exactly what a lot of self-funded search businesses are. That's like my business
Yep.
is, we're around 20 to 25 people, owner led, aka me, unfortunately. And like, yeah, we have key leadership hires to make over the next couple of years, but we don't have a recruiting function in house.
Yeah, and you don't need one.
Right.
It's kind of like, do you need a lawyer on staff for like 8 contract questions a year?
Right.
Good
So
point.
it's the same mentality.
It's a really good point. So then you're in that middle gray area, like you described with your LinkedIn deed description. I love that. It's another tweet going out later. But then because of that, you're in like a sweet spot of size. And my guess is like growing small businesses fit that size need. They're mostly bringing on new roles to fill those leadership seats. Because of that, you've chosen then specifically to be industry agnostic.
Exactly.
And my own experience, and I don't mean to inject it, is to see more of the recruiting community in industry specific recruiters. Like, I don't know if this is just common or more my world, but like the accounting and finance recruiting community is very prevalent. And like they rip out of Big Four and they place in house. And it's like this, they're just part of the toll booth on the highway of that circle of life. But you've gone another direction. So you don't have an industry focus. Like, what are the costs to that? You have to somehow stay agnostic and yet still be helpful enough to owners, even though you're not an expert in their business per se.
Yeah. So great point. And that goes back to like the perceptions of recruiting. A lot of people immediately think staffing hourly, like light industrial. They think like Fortune 500, like massive fees to replace a CEO of Starbucks, whatever. Or they think of like accounting, finance, and healthcare, right? Like right in the middle there. All those accounting and finance groups are a dime a dozen. They're fantastic. They make a ton of money. They're typically just rotating Pam, Tom, and Sue to different, companies when their non-competes run out. So, I have done accounting and finance roles in the past, and I like them because I think going back to like my niche, it's more of like not a niche in industry. Obviously, I mean, granted, I do a lot of work in like the SMBs. If you consider that a niche, it's still a pretty big one, but the narrative's the same. of like what I was talking about earlier of like owner led, has a story, wants to recruit people. It's typically like an unassuming industry, like property management, for example. My son's 4 years old. You think he wants to grow up and be in property management? No, he wants to be like a dinosaur or an astronaut. But property management, man, it's a sneaky world. There's a lot of innovation, a lot of tech, a lot of global talent, a lot of people making a lot of money, and some really cool opportunities. So they see me and they're like, hey, man, it's really hard to recruit in property management because it takes time to tell that story. People look at us, think we're turning wrenches and fixing roofs. They don't realize that we can actually pay really well. We got full benefits and a matching 401k, but we don't have the time to tell that story, right? Or like pick any SMB that's cleaning trees, fences. Nobody, Sam, I'm sorry to bust your bubble, man, but like my son also doesn't want to work for a fence company. But if you have a great culture, you're growing, there's leadership opportunity, it takes time to tell that story. So going back to your question, like, do I have a niche? Kind of, sort of, right, in some industries. But yeah, man, I like my flexibility in that if they have all their stories and all their narratives are the same, right? So the niche is more in the narrative and not in the actual industry, if that makes sense.
Sure. For sure.
No, I think about this all the time where I'm like, there's all of these sort of industry agnostic positions, whether it's, and they obviously have to learn the industry, but like GM or operations manager or what have you, like these roles, like you need a really strong operator, but you can teach them the industry. But
Yeah.
if they don't know about your business or your industry, they're never going to apply, right?
Yeah.
They're never going to see it. So I think about that all the time where I'm like, I'm pretty confident we have better jobs than a lot of, equivalent roles at like store manager of the local Domino's or what what
Yeah.
have you, and we could probably pay better too. It's just like people don't think about it.
But that's the other benefit of using a recruiter is that, when we're like onboarding folks and kind of talking through the candidate profile, we say, hey, where should we go and poach from? And where should we not go? Because like there's no rules in the wilderness. Like once you like let a recruiter loose, like if you got a Friday foursome with your buddies and they own a local competitor company, and they're like, you need to tell us now because we will go after their people. And there are some scenarios where it's okay for us to go after them and not them. And I'm not talking about anything shady, but just like if they don't have the time, and also too, like think about it. Like if you're the owner of a business and you see another competitor or another industry adjacent and you start contacting their directors and VPs, if you get them to lunch, it's super awkward. It feels like volume up, like we're going to make this happen. It's just lunch.
Totally.
So like, it's like they feel that candidate feels like they're on the 50-yard line, and everybody that walks in that restaurant is going to see y'all and think that you're plotting something. With me, I'm more like under the bleachers, having a quick chat and being like,
point.
it's just me and you. Let's talk. Let's clear on comp. Let's clear on timeline. Let's clear on things. If everything checks out, all right, cool. I'll introduce you. And that's what owners like a lot is that they can get a good like feel for the market. Like going back to the real estate agent, I can go knock on a lot of neighbors' doors and say, hey, are you selling? Where it'd be awkward for them to. And I'm like, hey, look, Tom down the street, that 4-3 with a pool? He actually is looking to move to get closer to family. You interested? Like, it's stuff like that. Like a good recruiter is a good partnership because they always got their ears out for you and their eyes out, and they can just do things that you can't do.
So I almost want to ask, what are the biggest misconceptions that owners, your clients, have about using recruiters to build their leadership teams? Or like, what's the misunderstanding? Maybe the better way to think about it is when you're sitting down to talk to a prospect, not a target to be recruited, but a client to do the recruiting for, what is the unlock you have to get past to get them on board? What is the key to what is the improvement in their business they're going to get when they use you and hire leadership?
I would say a lot of times they think of recruiting as posting, pinging, or procrastinating. All right. So 3 Ps. They just post a job. So why would I pay you to post a job and give you 20 to 25% of first year salary? Like, is that all you're going to do? They just ping their friends, right? Or they just procrastinate and just kick the can and convince themselves they don't really need that opportunity. So the problem with that, and pardon the 3 C's here, I sound like a Baptist pastor, but it's like, when they post, it's like, it's just cluttered. You get like a ton of applicants who like you have to like DQ, and it's just, you don't want to deal with it. It's too close. So someone who connects you with their friend's daughter's boyfriend could be a great kid, but terrible director. or it's just like too constant, like the whole procrastination thing of like, it's just like it never ends. And you have not filled this role and you need to. So I think for them, it's kind of that classic thing when the pain exceeds like the process it takes to like remove that pain. I mean, most people who call me, they say we need someone yesterday, or they say we need someone today. Those are music to my ears because I know they're going to move with a sense of urgency. Right. So, Sam, a lot of those conversations have already been had. Like, they're not going to call me unless they're really feeling the pain. But going back to the misconception, yeah, I got to fight through the bad experiences they've had with like folks just posting, or kind of like the classic real estate agent who just unlocks the door. Because people only call me in two scenarios. One, they've never used a recruiter, or two, they used one and they didn't like them. That's really the only two scenarios that I'm called. So I have to fight expectations on each one. But once they see me as like a partner and as an expert, because I love this stuff and I talk about it every day, they're kind of like, oh, like this makes sense. This is just like my bookkeeper, my lawyer, accountant. I don't need to know exactly what they're doing every day. I just need the outputs. And I also need to know that their outputs are better than me doing it myself or figuring out how to do it on myself. It's the same framework, just people just don't apply it to recruiting as much.
How long on average from that first call when they call you, they have that pain, till somebody is hired and starting their first day?
I say 2 to 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Six
That's
weeks.
Fast.
Yeah. Well, some people say it's slow. It all depends. All about expectations, man. It's crazy. So, dude, I'm telling you, man, a lot of my sales process is just educating people and setting expectations, because you're also still in the people business. Like, that's what sucks about recruiting. You're dealing with three people, if you count me, and I got my emotions and my ego and my timelines and bandwidth. But like, you can get someone to the finish line and it's been tracking well the whole time. And then right at the 2-yard line, they go total Russell Wilson and throw a pick. And it's like, oh my gosh, we had it. We were right there. Like,
we don't need the Seahawks slander out of the blue. Well,
it's
still too soon.
But once again, man, like part of that's my coaching too. I'm like, hey, look, I know you think it's a great job. I know you think you have a great culture. I know you think this is an awesome opportunity. And I know it sounds silly that they want another 5K on the base. You're about to lose. And I get hear from a client sometimes, well, we want them. If it's only going to be 5K, then it proves they don't want to be here. And I'm like, well, man, you're asking them to do the same thing. It's like that 5K means a lot to them. I don't know why, but it does. If you don't offer that 5K more, you will lose this person. And it's going to take 3.5, 4 weeks to find someone maybe better. So like, once again, that's what you want to hear from your accountant or your lawyer of like, hey, you're welcome to say that to that angry client. But if you do, they're going to come at you.
So Dylan, I think another thing prospects like Kaustubh and I would like to ask is, how do you price, if you're willing to share that? You don't have to give us specifics, but broad strokes. How do potential customers like us pay for services like yours?
Great question. I'm typically just straight down the middle recruiter, industry standard, 20 to 25% of first year salary. I might bump that up a little bit if it's a confidential search or like super niche or like super rural or super technical. But for the most part, it's 20 to 25%. I don't know how other firms do it, but I try to spread out my payments as like a nod to the SMB community of saying, hey, cash flow is king. So I typically do it like 4 to 5 installments or just whatever they want. And just going back to like, I mean, if I only do one search for somebody, then I've done something wrong. And even if it's only like one a year, that's fine. But typically, you try to have a good partnership where people feel like they get their bang for the buck, where they find the person they want, right? But at the same time, hopefully they level up other recruiting and hiring and just kind of like mentality and processes for like the $12 an hour jobs. They can use some of the things they learned in that quote unquote leadership search. They can now apply to that. So I try to be, pretty standard when it comes to fee and like finding the output, but also trying to level up everything.
And what is is there a like, hey, if this person churns in 60 days, or how does that work?
Oh yeah, man. That's like the question I get all the time. Besides just like, what's your name and where are you from? It's like, hey, what happens if it doesn't work out? I mean, I can't speak for every recruiter, but I'm pretty generous in that. Like there's like a credit system. It's all in the agreement. It's covering that basis. I've had that happen once in the last like 40 searches and it sucked. It wasn't because they found like meth in the guy's car or he was, doing something crazy. He got poached from a former his former business's main competitor heard that he wasn't there anymore, and then they came after him. And like,
Wow.
dude, it was cool. Like, it was good for him. He got like a dream job. Like, the client like was frustrated, but they also understood. And I was kind of like, man, I get it, dude. So when that happens, the recruiter loses the most, and you got to like restart it. But it happens very rarely. So, but at the end of the day, like, you got to protect yourself, and I got to protect myself for if it does happen.
And is there like some kind of minimum, I would assume, like a retain,
Yeah, yeah. It's typically like
yeah.
60, 90 days, something like that.
Okay. No, I meant a minimum for like what stops somebody from just saying like, hey, I'm just curious, like what does a GM look like that I might be able to hire? Why don't you just like do a search?
I usually, man, that's a good question. Some people will do those. I've kind of gotten out of doing that. That's what we call like a contingency search. Like, every industry has their semantics where it's like, hey man, like, I kind of want to see what you can find, but I don't want to commit to
Yeah.
a search. I've moved away from that because it just like doesn't work. It's got to be like, hey man, we're all in, we're co-branding, you're doing your thing, and like all of us, whether it's like, I know saying you do a lot more things than fences, but like even with the trees, like, because what if you had someone out there like looking up at the branches, be like, hey, I think y'all need to cut that branch, and you're like, hey lady, like, we're not cutting that branch, like we have a process, or we're cutting that branch tomorrow. Like, you got to just like pay the expert, trust the expert. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, man, that's when it works best. And when the cool things happen is when it's like a lot of trust, a lot of expertise, and a lot of just like, man, that's when it flows.
And if I'm a business owner and I'm thinking about hiring you, like what is a mental shift I need to make around like, hey, don't be short-sighted around compensation in this environment, or I don't know, some little tidbit that would be interesting about small business r- hires.
I'm
What?
telling you, man, my biggest competition is not other recruiters. And like I said, I got nothing but love for a lot of the folks active on Twitter and LinkedIn. I talked to another recruiter this morning. Like, we're all kind of like, there's a lot of abundance mentality amongst recruiters. We just get it. And I mean that. I'm sure there's some bad apples, but for the most part, most of us work really well together. So my other competition is not my fee. I'm a little too juicy for some people, but that's cool. Like, maybe later down the road. My biggest competitor is the white knuckles of them holding a grip on the outputs that this person would take over, or holding a grip on like, I don't trust anybody to share my story. There's got to be a let go of like, hey man, I'm going to trust Kalmar Group to be the first impression of my business and share my story and my narrative. That's the hardest part. But I think once people get past that, and look, man, at one point this year, 100% of my business was referrals and repeat clients. So it's like I'm doing something right. Like, I'm not a total idiot. So I think that's really helpful. And that's where it goes back to like, once you kind of like do it once, you're like, okay, this is how it works. Can you do this search? Can you do that search? That's when things really start to get fun. The first search is usually the most challenging, but after that, man, it's just flowing.
I bet. And maybe to wrap things up, if people want to find you or reach out to you, how do they do that?
Man, well, one, LinkedIn. I know people call it link cringe. I do post on there a good bit. So LinkedIn, just name Dylan Scroggins. Twitter at the SMB recruiter. Snag that one pretty early on. And then lastly, the website's thekalmargroup.com. So TheKalmar group.com. For the record, I bought kalmargroup.com this year. Some random dude emailed me and said he had the domain. And I'm like, you're lying. Then I called GoDaddy, you'll be proud of negotiated like a 60% discount. And he was like, sure. And I was like, I should have asked for more. Because I always felt like the Kalmar Group gave these Ohio State vibes, and I didn't like it.
Mhm.
But it was all that was available at the time. So thekalmargroup.com. And kind of lastly, I can't believe I haven't mentioned this yet. Just to wrap us up, I'm telling you, man, for the search community, the same thing they do in finding a business to buy, I'm telling you, like, you could go read those books and just replace search with recruiting. It's like the same mentality and process, and like, getting your framework of what you want, your location. Like, there's so much language overlap in finding a business and finding leaders, where even if you don't use a recruiter, and like, even if you don't use me, whatever, like, I'm telling you, man, you got to use that same intentionality and diligence in finding leadership roles that you use to buy your business. that's where you're going to get the biggest returns. And it's not just finding the business. It's also seeing all the other businesses that you did not buy to know that you got the one that you needed. So kind of a closing remarks there. There's a lot of synergy in what I'm doing and what you guys are up to.
Thank
I
you,
couldn't
Dylan.
stand the search process, so that it's a good reminder that I would be a bad recruiter. That's for
Man,
sure.
you got my number.
Exactly. Yeah, the hope is you supporting our podcast will at least get paid off by either Samurai using you enough anyways. So,
Yeah,
Good point.
I've given Sam enough money the last few years. It's about time that Venmo goes the other way.
That's a good point. But here we go. Since Kaustubh can't pistol whip me anymore, I'm going to introduce the wolf back. There's a little bit of.
There he is.
Is that the Kalmar Group wolf? Like you gave him that?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I know we're wrapping up, but when we were at, when I used to hire a lot of sales roles, people would always ask us in the interview process, what separates good performers from bad performers? And we'd say it's the same difference between a wolf and a coyote. A coyote waits for something to die. A wolf goes and kills it. So total like software SaaS bro language there. But at the same time, my wife was reading a book and one of the main characters, it sounds silly, but it's like a Chronicles of Narnia, but kind of revamped. And there's a kind of a character in there that became this like wolf king, and his name was Kalmar. And I just loved the name. And it was a really cool story about kind of like that kid's story. And so anyway, I had these two things happening and the domain was available. At least I thought at the time. And yeah, man, so I snagged it. So yeah, I've just kind of leaned into the Kalmar and the wolf, and going back to like, even the recruiting, people want people that will like go out and find stuff, not just wait for something to walk into camp. So yeah, man, I've going all in on the wolf.
I love it.
I love
That's
it
awesome.
too. It's a great way to
Cool.
end. Thanks, Dylan. That was fun.
Appreciate you guys.